Thank you, Grace. So, hi, Susan. Like Grace introduced me, my name's Arini, and I'll be doing the presentation on making groups more inclusive. I'm not sure if you've managed to get your mic working or not, or maybe you just want to introduce yourself and like what part of like where you stay and what your role is with Woodcraft, like volunteering with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry, I was just on top of my mouse. Yeah, I work I volunteer in the Leeds, one of the Leeds groups. My kids have been involved with Woodcraft Folk since they're about 5 or 6. Now they're older. I've only got kind of one boy in kind of venturers, so he's kind of 14. So yeah, I've been involved for quite a few years. I just thought this was kind of quite timely because in Leeds we've been having discussions around diversity and inclusion. And we're having our first meeting on Sunday actually, to discuss kind of what we can do in kind of Leeds to make it a bit more inclusive, and to also just see what we're doing right, because I think we are doing some things right, but I think there's probably kind of quite a lot of it, there's probably other stuff we can do as well. So yeah, that's my involvement. I've only got the email today, so it's probably it was a bit and I've only just filled in the questionnaire like 5 minutes ago, so again it's been a bit rushed.
No worries, well, it's great for you to join us. So I'm just going to start sharing my group, so my screen, sorry, so then you can see the presentation. Okay,
there we are.
Yeah, great. So like I said, making groups more inclusive, and my role is a development officer in London. And so I kind of thought maybe there'd be a little bit more people here to have a discussion kind of, but it's looking like it'll just be us three, but I think it'll still be great to kind of, have a discussion about what your group may do and like where you might need some help or how we can support you, and also some advice and things that we give to people who have asked about diversity and inclusion. So part of my role has been to help with rebuilding groups. So I've kind of got not an understanding, but I've kind of been trying to find different ways of when we are rebuilding our groups, how we can make them more diverse and inclusive, and different techniques and different ways of reaching out to different communities. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about today. So I just wanted to first start to find out what your expectations of the session, like what would you like to get out of the session, or what do you expect to kind of find out here in this discussion?
Yeah, it's my first it's my first time kind of coming into this area. I mean, I'm interested in obviously expanding kind of Woodcraft Folk, but I'm kind of coming from it from a fairly kind of new angle, so I don't quite know kind of what I'm doing. So to be honest, I have very limited expectations, so I'm sure anything you say will just be kind of like, kind of great. And like I said, because we're only just starting, we're going to start our own group in Leeds, because I know kind of nationally the Woodcraft Folk are doing something. So I just thought if we just set ourselves up like a local group, then hopefully we can have that discussion first of all in Leeds, and then kind of look to kind of national office as well, just to help us kind of move it along. So yeah, I don't really have any expectations, so I'm sure it's going to be great, whatever you say.
Okay, that's great. And it's interesting to hear. So in Leeds, it would be a new group, or is it a group that's already established?
We've had groups in Leeds. So we kind of most of the Leeds groups were revamped about 8 years ago. So there was quite a few parents that had previously been in Woodcraft Folk as kind of kids. So they knew kind of how they kind of ran. I was completely new to Woodcraft. It just wasn't really on my radar kind of growing up. So they kind of set up the groups, and then from there some of the old groups kind of set up again. So within Leeds there's about kind of 4 or 5 active groups now, and most of them are about at least they're still fairly young, because some of them went into abeyance. So they've been open for about kind of 8 years kind of max really.
Okay.
It would be lovely to have a chat, Susan, as well. After the session, I'll reach out to you on email, just because part of my role is to help support new groups who would like to do something and create something. So it'd be great to have a chat with you about sort of where we can signpost you to some resources if you need them.
Cool, that'd be really good. Yeah, thank you.
Great. So some of the aims and the objectives of this session that I have written up is to encourage groups to be proactive in their diversity and inclusion plans and to find out what support is needed from Central Woodcraft for better understanding of diversity and inclusion in districts and groups. So on our website and Woodcraft's ethos when it comes to equality and inclusion is we seek to build an inclusive movement that celebrates diversity and is welcoming to young people of all faiths and none. We affirm young people's identities and seek to remove the barriers that exist to their participation in our movement and wider society. So when I'm talking in the further slides, it's kind of going to be addressing removing barriers more such, and also finding ways to create these environments that are welcoming to others who may not feel as though previous examples of what they may go to are comfortable, or also in terms of representation and connecting with other different forms of communities that we might not have tapped into before or thought to tap into. So just a breakdown of the session would be an introduction, an icebreaker, and then how to attract diverse volunteers, how to attract diverse young people, and then beyond diversity, which I think we focus on quite a bit, we want to look at the inclusion part of diversity and inclusion, and then just some closing remarks and next steps. So first thing that I wanted to find out from people involved are what are the challenges of making groups diverse. So for yourself, and maybe some ideas that you haven't, like that you may have faced previously or may come to mind, what are some challenges you may feel might come from lack of diversity, or yeah.
Well, just the area we kind of live in, really. So where we live, like North Leeds is quite an affluent area. So when our original group kind of set up, it was obviously set up by kind of parents that lived in that area. And therefore it kind of attracted kind of people that kind of live locally, and then obviously that attracts kind of friends of those that are already in the group. Yeah. I mean, I like to think they're not kind of cliquey, but I guess, you know, for an outsider it possibly could be. I remember my first because I wasn't kind of part of Woodcraft Folk and I didn't know the people, so like my first time turning up with my kid was quite an eye-opener. It just it just did seem very different from what I, you know, obviously how I, you know, kind of grew up and stuff like that. But I think so I think that's kind of one of the challenges, really. I mean, the trouble is with any of these groups, you always need passionate kind of volunteers, and that's really hard because obviously, you know, that takes up a lot of people's time, which obviously everyone's kind of time for, and it takes quite a lot of kind of confidence as well. So I hadn't really kind of done any kind of public speaking or any kind of group work. And I remember the first time I kind of led a session for the first time, I was absolutely petrified. So again, that kind of involvement for a lot of people can be quite hard as well. Yeah. One of the things that we're also struggling with the venturers, which is like the older group, so 13 to 16-year-olds, is the fact that it's kind of full. So although we kind of want to kind of make it, you know, kind of want to advertise it and make it more diverse, it's actually a full group. So we can't expand it without any more kind of volunteers or finding the costs for like another venue. And then obviously you're stretched because volunteers don't have much time anyway. So there's that issue as well. And then again, so you've got parents of kind of volunteers, their friends, and then obviously you've got like the children that kind of involved as well, so they'd be looking to kind of invite their friends as well. So the venturers group that we have, I think they're all from actually the same school, as far as it wasn't like that last year, but again, it's, you know, it's quite diverse, but even being from the same school in a way is quite you know, no problems as well. It's not very diverse if they're all from the same school, I suppose. But
yeah, I think with a lot of our groups as well, we see that many of the kids, they do all come from the same class or the same school, like you say. And so I think it's like a wider way of when we connect with different, like when we would connect to trying to invite people to come to our groups, and it's just going to be our friends or people that are close to them. Of course, we kind of are around people who are more like, who are, you know, in the same groups as us and maybe kind of live the same kind of lives as us and have the same privileges as us. So then it does make it a little bit difficult to then diversify. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing to invite our friends to come to our groups and stuff. Like if the numbers are there, that's amazing and it's great. And if they want to come along, then of course it's great to have as many young people as possible to interact with. I feel, and I'll touch on this a little bit more in terms of connecting with different young people, then it might have to kind of stretch past the classroom and maybe go to inviting people from clubs or inviting people from other places that our young people may attend. Just from then we can get a different diverse range of people. So I feel like that challenge is something that a lot of our groups are facing, in the sense that many of the kids do come from the same class and then they all grow up together. And so when new people, like in Woodcraft, and so when new people do join, then they kind of just feel like they might be a little bit more on the outside because others have, you know, grown up in the Woodcraft together. So that's definitely a challenge that would take a lot of working towards. So
also,
yeah.
sorry, I've just thought of another challenge. Sorry.
Yeah, no, right. I want to hear
It's going to be a list from me about all the horrible problems we have. It's just about kind of word, you know, and also, well, because we're based in quite an affluent kind of area, Leeds, I suppose. It's kind of like, would we then look to go into a store, you know, like do a store or do an event in a kind of like a less affluent area? And then it's how do you kind of pitch that without sounding really patronizing or really offensive as well? Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of making sure, I find that quite hard as well. You don't want to offend anybody by saying, you know, we're here because we need to invite, you know, people that are poorer or kind of, you know, less abled. And it's how you kind of, how you do it in a positive way as well. I think it's really hard.
Yeah, I think one thing I would draw on just from the experience of, for example, so I've been working closely with the group in White City, which is in West London, and we're trying to focus on connecting with a range of different young kids. And so we've been focusing on running our activities close to like the estate that's local to the school so that we get a range of different young children. And also when we do our playouts, not necessarily having them where we meet, but maybe somewhere where there's more diverse kids in the area. So not necessarily in the community hall that we meet in weekly, but maybe somewhere else where it's close to the hall so we can get kids that live locally, but also that's in a more diverse area. I think in terms of like how you word it and not coming across and saying that, oh, we just want like, you know, like to be offensive or say something that might come across as if you're just coming here because you want to target these types of people, maybe just more expressing how you want to connect with all ranges of people within the community and how you want to connect with the community as a whole and not just within one circle, stressing how Woodcraft is a youth group that wants to connect with making people active within this within the society and within the community, and therefore we want to run a range of activities all over the borough and not just in one particular area. So that's kind of how I've tried to address it, because I know sometimes it can come across quite difficult to not seem as if you're just, you know, out there just trying to get these certain people because you feel you need to, or because you look like a particular way, but just stressing that it's more of a sense of we want a community that's reflective of where we live, and that's not just one type of group, that's everybody, and we want everybody involved. So to start with, how to attract diverse volunteers is the first slide. And again, I've been doing a lot of this in my role when working with White City, and I think there are a different range of techniques, and I think it's important to get volunteers that if we want to have diverse young people, we need to have diverse volunteers. So they can't all, you know, be from the same kind of background, because then if younger kids or younger families want to come and join and they see the reflection that's not necessarily something they can identify with or feel comfortable in or feel like they might not fit in or be understood, then it can be quite difficult to take the step, even though it's not the case of feeling excluded. If you're worried just from looking on the outside, you might not take the steps to, come into the group. So I don't know what your volunteers are where in Leeds, but some strategies that I've found that are quite helpful to finding a range is to use diverse ways of recruitment. So not only just word of mouth, because if you do word of mouth for a friend, then of course it's going to stay within the same circles, but maybe finding networks online or connecting with another youth group in the area. So when we were first doing our meeting in White City, we were meeting at a place called The Hub, which was a place where young families and young kids would come to meet, and they would kind of just do some work in that center. And so I connected with the young people, I connected with the people there and spoke to some of the parents to first invite the young people to come down and then kind of speak to those people, to those families to find out whether the parents wanted to volunteer and what support they would need while volunteering. So many would stress about flexible volunteering, as like you say, it's very time consuming to be a volunteer. And so we need to take into account how different groups might have different struggles with finding childcare, affording childcare, or if they have younger kids that can't come to the group, or necessarily if they might be working on some days, that they might not be able to volunteer every week or so often. So just trying to be flexible with who we want to volunteer with us. And I know it can be difficult because we need kind of commitment to help the group be strong in running. But I think it's also important that we are flexible and that we do not isolate certain people completely. So if they aren't able to give us all their time, that we just can kind of adapt and see how we can also fit them into volunteering with us. And then also I did mention reaching out to members and their friends. So even though I mentioned that it can be quite a small knit circle, that possibly reaching out to beyond school, maybe the clubs that your kids may attend or young people may attend, or clubs that are in the area that are not necessarily, clubs that are necessarily attended by the same types of children, but a range of different children. Whether it's a free event that's running in the community or a paid event, you're going to get different types of groups that may attend the paid event or those that attend the free events after school. Also, the use of social media has been very important in the recruitment of volunteers. I'm not sure if your group do have any social media networks of their own, but it's also quite useful to use that, and also any groups that you may be part of on your own personal Facebook. So if you're part of like the parent groups or the community groups, reaching out to those parents, because then you can find a diverse range on there also through social media. And also to be quite clear about what types of volunteers you're looking for. So sometimes when we might write out a recruitment for a volunteer, we might be quite, we might not be very clear on what we want, and it might just be very boxed what we're looking for, but making sure that we are clear about what support we can offer to those that do want to volunteer with us, and whether they will need support, how we can support them, whether it's the flexible volunteering, whether it's making sure that if they do have young children, that they might still be able to come down, and that there is like support to also, look after not look after, but also keep that young, like if there's wood chips, for example, with my group, we have wood chips with some of our volunteers. We don't have a wood chip group, but just still making them aware that they are able to bring their young kids, because they might feel that they can't, but they can still also bring their young kids while they're volunteering with us. So how have you found kind of recruiting volunteers and volunteers in general with yourself?
Well, yeah, so most of our volunteers are the parents themselves. with our younger groups, we've had some people come forward, some younger people, and that's really handy actually, because it's nice to see kind of young people that aren't parents, because there's a different connection there. So we've got like a university student, and then we had someone that was doing A levels. And again, I think you're right about kind of giving them a bit more space and that kind of like flexibility, really, because obviously they've got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Just having kind of non-parents there has been like really useful. I mean, it would be, go back to what you said, actually, it'd be you to kind of, it'd be nice to get volunteers that are kind of interested in maybe doing youth work or getting into social work, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be really useful, and I think it just brings a different kind of dynamics to it. They've got, they always come up with like new ideas and different ways of looking at things. And I think obviously the kids are so used to the parents kind of leading it. I think they themselves probably get a bit fed up. When we get a bit fed up, so it'd be nice to kind of get some volunteers that are not, that don't have that kind of like relationship. So contacting other kind of like youth, it'd be a really great experience for anyone kind of looking to get into some sort of youth work, actually.
Yeah, I found that also. I've reached out to local colleges and universities to find out about like what they do for people that are looking for work in youth work, and how we can offer like a volunteer opportunity and experience for them. And it's been really helpful for finding volunteers and then kind of connecting with other young people, so they can like spread the message. Like when it's one young person, then it kind of like trickles down to the rest of them. And I think, like you say, in terms of the flexibility, that flexibility is very important to them. But I think they do definitely have that passion that's kind of different to if you're a parent, because they are trying to, grow in their career and kind of grow in the experience, and they have a passion for young people, which is why they're doing what they do. And so it brings something completely different to the experience. And also having young people there, I think, can also help the young people kind of the members who are attending to kind of like feel connected more, so they're not like seeing the parents all the time and stuff. And it kind of gives the parents a bit, a face to it, like they can also, take a step back as well so it's good to get students. I found are very like you said, very important to try and reach out to, and just also it's like stressing to them about the flexibility, because sometimes they find if it's quite rigid that they might be a bit put off by the situation. So yeah. The next slide will be how to attract diverse young people. So the things that I've been finding have been important have been connecting with community events and call outs. So doing taster sessions in areas where there are diverse communities. So for example, if there is a local festival going on, like I know there's Christmas markets that will be coming up, or like Christmas festivals and such, to connect with those kind of community events, because it will be attended by a range of families, because families are always looking for free events to do in the community, and so you can find a diverse range of people who are attending. I think also if there's like a community hall or community center in your area, reaching out to these community halls and community centers where they might run like other events monthly or weekly, whatever it may be in the borough, connecting there, because then families will already know kind of what goes on in those types of things, and they'll be looking out for those community events. So I would also suggest to get the name out there and to get the group out to do events and weekly activities beyond the group night. So I know that would be very time consuming, so I wouldn't necessarily say like every week, but maybe like every like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, wherever it may be, just doing another taster session, maybe in a different area of the community, so that you can also get the name out there, but also connect with people, whether it be for volunteers, whether it be for young people, just being able to run a taster session also on the weekends, so that they can, actually attend, and before they commit to doing something on the weekday, like doing something on the weekend, because they may have more time. Also, if there have been anybody that's kind of phased out, this is going back to having the importance of young members. If there are anybody that's phased out that are like DFs or so, like using them to be our volunteers and using them to kind of connect with other young people in the community. So once they kind of get to that age where they might not be able to attend Woodcraft as often, still keeping them involved to some degree so that they can, you know, still feel as though they can bring other young people, they might know younger people, or they might have more connections to different youth groups that are going on in the area to then, you know, get people to know about Woodcraft and what's going on in the community. And then, like I said, finding festivals and events and setting up stalls in the community. So I know, I'm not sure about Leeds, but in London, there's always lots of events going on around the boroughs that people can connect with, and whether it's like a festival for, like I say, Christmas, or whether it's an Easter, or whether it's a half-term like festival, or like something as such happening at a school that you might know about in the newsletter, finding out if you see like your kids, something's happening in your kids' school, maybe reaching out and saying, oh, well, we have like Woodcraft and we would love to come down and like just run a stall there. And if it's appropriate to do so, can we just do it? And it doesn't have to be anything that's going to be majorly like take a lot of resources or a lot of planning, but just if you're already going to be attending, just setting up a little stall and doing like a little arts and craft, or just like passing out some little leaflets on the stall to engage with more young people. Yeah, that's just some ways that I would say I found kind of success in trying to recruit different young people and diversify the types of young people that we do engage with, just always making sure where is the community event being held, who is it being held by, what kind of groups do I think will be attending, and making sure that you're taking into account that if you want to reach the people that necessarily are kind of neglected within communities, that you're reaching out to community groups that might work specializing in a particular group, such as refugees and minorities and people like that within the community, as I found that they're always kind of looking to connect with other youth groups in the community as well. They're always looking for an opportunity to make sure that their young people that are attending there have other things that they can feel comfortable to engage in. But also, if you are looking at youth organizations, maybe some that are not so closely, you know, do the same thing as Woodcraft would do, maybe something a little bit more on the opposite side. So then the young people that attend there feel like they would be getting something different from Woodcraft. And also, I'm not sure what your group stance is in terms of membership fees or anything like that. Do you have like a specific like payment, or is it kind of, what's the situation?
Yeah, I mean, we are pretty good. So we just ask for donation, and again, it's you know, we've always made it really clear, as in, you know, that should never, we'll, you know, we word it as in like, you know, donation shouldn't be a barrier. So I mean, that's always been like really, that's always been really good. We've also offered to kind of cover kind of bus fares and things like that, but we don't kind of advertise that because again, we just want to make sure sorry, just one moment.
No worries.
I was actually thinking, Irini, of obviously this winter, there's going to be a lot of community spaces that are going to be warm spaces for people as well.
Yeah.
Which would be probably a really nice thing to tap into if we can offer. I mean, obviously, we could, you know, we don't want to be outside with everyone on the freezing cold when they're all trying to warm up indoors. I'm sure there's something that we could be doing in community spaces like that.
Yeah.
To attract people in those areas.
Yeah. Definitely.
Sorry,
yeah,
my children wanted feeding, so I had to just tell them there was food in the house. It's fine.
Just gonna find it somewhere. So I think, like you were saying, in terms of waiving membership and paying for travel and making sure if there's like carpool opportunities as well, that if that's possible, that's possible. And I think, yeah, it's probably best not to like overly advertise, because then you don't know, you know, what would happen. I think like just make it be known and not like a hidden thing that if people have to ask for as well, because it can be like kind of not shameful, but like a bit like people can feel as though they don't want to ask because they don't want to be, you know, judged or what it may be. So just making sure that the information is just, you know, known to everyone. And even so, like if there's always new members, that is something that you specify so that it's just there. And so if they need it, that they can just know that they know it's there rather than having to ask for something. But I think that's definitely very important. And then beyond diversity, thinking about inclusion in terms of beyond like minorities or beyond diversifying the types of young people in terms of like gender or what it may be, would be thinking about how we are open to people who have all forms of disability, whether visible or invisible. So when I was at Common Ground, I was able to speak to some young people, and they were able to express to me how even though they don't have visible disabilities, that sometimes they can feel quite overwhelmed when they do come to activities, just because they don't know what's going to be happening or like what they're going to get on the day, or obviously that they could find that their mood isn't necessarily in the right place and stuff. So I think it was quite important to for that person to express the importance of quiet and safe spaces within the places where we meet. So just making it known that if people do feel overstimulated or or they may feel like things are getting on top of them, that there is a space that they can go to where they can just be by themselves and they don't have to answer any questions, or they're not asked why you're there or what you're doing. And also that was important that maybe if there was a volunteer who they knew that they could come to speak about an issue that they may have or how they're feeling on that day, or someone that was there to support those people directly. Like when we are in schools, and obviously we don't want to make it like a school setting, kids that do need the extra support do have someone that they know is there with them and able to support them. So I think that's also quite important to have in our youth, in our groups as well, just to know that there is a particular person who is there for their needs and if they need to express anything that they're feeling. And then in terms of facilities and additional support, I'm sure, like I said, with the quiet spaces and accessibility, just making sure that these things are a priority on our list, and support for travel, like you've already mentioned, in terms of if they are struggling to get somewhere, that maybe there's help with traveling somewhere in terms of the cost, or even finding an appropriate way of traveling. And yeah, so if there might be like a station or something as such that they might need to go to on the train, or I don't know if it's a bus or something, that some help can be provided for them to get to, I don't know, wherever they may be coming from, to and also, like I said, in terms of funds and membership fees, I've already asked about what support. So like you said, waiving the membership fee, and also in terms of travel, maybe offering like a support for traveling, carpool, or maybe having some kind of fund set up where members who do have the facilities to give a little bit more can maybe give some more to go towards people who need help with travel support. And also making sure that and I know this is obviously very important for a lot of people anyways, and it's something that goes beyond just diversity and inclusion, but creating a welcoming and inviting environment. So making sure that if we do spot something that could be uncomfortable for someone, or can be triggering, or like might be a little bit loud, or like you can see the behaviors getting a bit too much for someone, to just make sure that we're being aware of, because young people, of course, they can get ahead of themselves and they might not know what they're getting up to and around. So just making sure that we are creating an environment where we have the awareness. And yeah, is there any questions in terms of that, or do you have anything that your group does specifically in terms of making sure with people who need the additional help? Anything that you may do?
I think we're not. Yeah, I mean, I think we've. I think we're quite lucky, because I think our groups are quite diverse in that way. I think because I've got a background in working with children with additional needs anyway, that's kind of quite useful, and it's kind of useful to kind of use it as a discussion. I'm always quite surprised how kind of mature children can be. So when they see kind of behaviour, I mean, luckily, I suppose schools are quite diverse now as well in terms of kind of like additional needs. So even kids that are, like the younger ages, kind of like kind of helping kind of pioneers, really. If you explain something in the right way, children kind of get it. So obviously, normally if you'd have like a circle, you'd normally try and get all the children sat in a circle so you can have a discussion. But obviously, some children, they can't. They can't sit still. They'll be they'll need to kind of keep moving. They might make kind of noises, or and again, like you said, there might be certain games that it's too loud and a bit too kind of kind of vibrant. So we're lucky that obviously in our venues we've got like a little extra space. We can kind of put people into different groups. We try and use venues that kind of, because some community halls, just so echoey, and I can imagine like for some children that's awful to kind of deal with, really. So it doesn't help when you try and do like a big game, and it's just really, I mean, even for an adult, it's quite the noise can be full on. So we have kind of separate spaces, and again, normally there's a volunteer that can kind of work separately with people as well. Kind of sit with those that want to sit out. We've always got that option. If children want to kind of sit out. But we'll try and obviously involve them as much as possible. And also just asking for their ideas as well, in terms of kind of what they would like to see. And then for the older groups as well, it's about maybe getting them to just to think of adventurers in terms of them kind of like maybe leading a group around diversity, or kind of communication skills, that those kind of things.
I think one thing that I also forgot to mention was in terms of our volunteers as well. Like you said, you have that background in previously working with kids, so you have an understanding of ways to keep them engaged and make sure they're comfortable and things like that. So also maybe when we're advertising for our volunteers, that we don't necessarily say specialize in or anything like that, but just that we would love to have someone who has that kind of understanding. And also when we are looking for young people as well, making it clear that we do have these certain things in place for people so they can come to the group. So letting them know that there's space for them also to be included, not necessarily just directly out there, but maybe you can just mention it in a subtle way about the spaces that we have, and also in terms of how activities are planned. So I'm not sure, but sometimes with White City, we engage our young people to help with the planning so that they know about what activities they'll be getting involved in. So maybe mentioning something like that so that they can have an input, so that it kind of shows that if they don't feel comfortable with that activity, they can say that they might not want to do that activity, or that they might find it a bit difficult to engage in that activity, so that we can kind of find ways to adapt with them. I think those are all important things. And then, like I said, when advertising, make clear if there are accessibility limitations or facilities. Obviously, we hope that those aren't things that are in place, but just making sure that everybody's aware, and making sure that young people are involved in our planning, and find other ways to accommodate all members. So if one way might not work for one particular individual or for a group of people, making sure that rather than just brushing it off, that we're aware that this might not work for this group. How can we adapt this activity to work like this? How can we adapt how we meet, where we meet, what time we meet, whatever it may be, to kind of fit the members, or like you say, having the space, how can we adapt to find a space? So if we are doing an activity that might require a lot of like shouting or running around or something, maybe to take it outside so there's less of the echoing sound, just finding ways to kind of work around certain issues. And then I just prepared some short resource list, and I found that these have been very important and very helpful. So the first two are IFM Diversity and Inclusion Checklist, and it's kind of just a breakdown of different categories that we might have within our groups, and have we thought them through, or have we adapted it? So for example, have we thought about waiving a membership fee, or have we thought about what days we meet, what time we meet, in terms of for volunteers who may be from a working class background and work multiple jobs, so maybe they don't have the time, so we need to think about like in times of meeting, or commitment, in terms of what commitments they're able to do, like, so have we thought that through? And then the second one is Altogether Make Inclusion Happen. And there is quite an older resource, but I found that it's a good resource in breaking down how to connect with the communities, how to reach out to religious groups, how to reach out to youth groups, how to run a play out and such. It gives good little breakdowns of those types of things that I found were quite important. And then the following one is Reflecting Your Community. So thinking about how we reflect our communities. So like I say, getting the diverse volunteers and connecting with young people beyond just our little bubbles that we sometimes create. And then the last one is volunteering as a tool for inclusion. So using our volunteers. So if we have a diverse volunteer, they might be able to connect with a diverse range of volunteers. They might be able to connect with different groups and bring in different young people that we wouldn't be able to connect with if we were speaking to the kids that all attended the same school, for example. So I found that those resources are quite helpful. And then just to close, is there like anything you wanted to say about the diversity, the inclusion or the diversity part?
Can you send the links? Are you sending the slides anyway?
I think Grace.
So what I will do is I just need to get this recording edited just to make sure your name is covered up as well, so that we're all good to go. Once that's done, I'll upload it onto our event page on the website. And Irini, if I could get a copy of those slides from you, then I'll make sure to get that uploaded in sort of the show notes, if you like. Yeah.
Cool. It's just for the links. Oh, and the slides will be really useful as well, actually. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Thank you.
The links are, yeah, definitely very helpful and very detailed. Some of them are a little bit outdated, so I would say maybe like written like 10 years ago or so. So maybe just, take what you can from the resources, but there is definitely a lot of great things in a lot of the stuff, because I guess it doesn't change and we're trying to be inclusive overall, but maybe just thinking more, we would think more about things like gender and such a little bit more in this day and age. So closing remarks were to invite you to fill out the Google Forms so that we are able to find out kind of what are your challenges, how we can support the challenges, what kind of resources we need to put together to help support groups a lot better with diversity and inclusion, and like what resources we need to put together. And I wanted to find out, like, what would you like from wider Woodcraft folk with your group in particular, with yourself in getting support with diversity and inclusion? Is there anything that we could support you with?
I don't think at this stage. I think probably the best thing to do, because we're meeting on Sunday with the rest of the like the new group, really. It'd be nice to kind of see it'd be interesting to see whether my concerns are similar to theirs, or they could have, maybe they've got no concern. Well, I suppose they don't have any, I'm sure they probably do have some concerns. Otherwise it'd be pointless coming to a meeting, wouldn't it? I suppose. So I think I'll probably just kind of speak to the group on Sunday and see what they say. I mean, the Google form, I just had to quickly kind of fill it in just before the meeting, so it wasn't a great my input on the form won't be great. But do you want anyone to kind of fill in that that form? So anyone from our group can.
Yeah, anybody can
Yeah.
fill in the form. We just want to
Okay.
know what people are finding difficult with their own groups, like whether you're a group leader or not. It might just be something you might know just from attending the group, but not being, you know, directly involved with it. Yeah, pass it on to whoever you feel would benefit from filling it out.
Okay, cool.
And then just that useful book was a handbook of young people's participation. So it's a book that kind of breaks down, it's not a free book, unfortunately, but it is quite a good book and a detailed book on breaking down young people's participation. So also thinking about just young people in general, not just one type, like not just what we've been talking about in terms of diversity and inclusion, but just everybody, how young people can participate in our groups effectively and feel comfortable in participating, and also going beyond participating as a young person, but also as a volunteer, and how to utilize young people to take on more volunteer roles within our groups. And then my email is just at the bottom here for if there's like any follow-up questions that you may have, or even like later on down the line, whatever it may be, just if you need any guidelines or guidance, sorry, or help on anything to do with these types of things, then yeah, you can send me an email and I'll be able to help and reply where I can.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and if there's like any other questions or anything, then just
So
let me know.
there was when we were talking about setting up a group, which was quite a few months ago, I did fill in like another Google form. So I'm assuming that I think there's going to be a I mean, Grace might know a bit more about it. Was there going to be a group kind of nationally for inclusion or diversity, or has that already been set up? Or
I think you're on mute.
Thank you. That's a really good question, Susan. To be honest, I don't know off the top of my head, so I don't want to give you any misinformation on that. Let me find out for you, and I'll email you separately to this anyway, signposting the new group. But I will find that out. Sorry, I can't.
I think it was about 3 months ago. I don't know whether it's Debs that sent it.
Yeah, I think I know what you may be inquiring about, because I had the same.
I know, Irene, it was a similar time to when we had our staff inclusion and diversity survey sent out, wasn't it? Okay. Yeah. No worries, Susan. I think I know where to find the answer. So
great stuff.
Let me have
we'll stay in touch. Yeah. Great stuff. Cool.
Fantastic. So Irene, do you mind if I share my screen 1 minute?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. How do you? Okay.
Hang on a minute. Let me. Oh yeah, don't worry, I've got it. Hang on. There we go. Can we see?
Okay.
Can we see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Yeah. Does it say next training sessions?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So yes. So Susan, next training sessions that we're having as part of this sort of autumn winter program is our group surgery, which is a drop-in session. That's next Tuesday, the 11th of October at 6 p.m. And then our communications manager is hosting one on, well, very helpfully actually, social media for groups, as well as sort of how to get press locally as well, and just some updated brand guidelines that she's been working on. We try to vary the evenings that we choose for our sessions, but just due to staff constraints, they're both on Tuesdays, unfortunately, the next two. But yes, our calendar on the website is up to date with all this as well. So I guess all I have to say is thank you, Irene, for your presentation. Super helpful. I definitely learned some things. Susan, I hope you found it useful too.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Good. And that concludes. So thank you so much for joining us.